everyone, and welcome to another episode of Taco Bata Tuesday, the show where we eat healthy, delicious tacos and have conversations about life. Your mind matters. You exert incredible influence on what you think and what you see. We don't have to accept life by the way that it comes to us. Instead, we can design it in advance so we can get the life that we actually seek. Another incredible quote from the book, It Takes What It Takes. I am so excited to bring even more of these to you because today we are going to do part 2 of the episode that I started last week, It Takes What It Takes. And these last few vital steps, habits, things to know are truly going to put the icing on top of the cake. So I can't wait for you to tune in and see what those are. But before we do that, let's go ahead and talk about the taco of the week. Y'all, it's Super Bowl week. I don't know about you, sports ball. I do watch sports, don't get me wrong. I just like to watch at the very end when there's like championships and playoffs and like fun things. And I really like to join in on the social events just for the food and the excuse to eat good food with good people. So if you're like me and you're trying to bring something to your Super Bowl party, you're going to need to check out the show notes before we leave today because I have chorizo taco bites. Super simple to make, freaking delicious. Just great to put out there on the table either as an appetizer or just something to snack on. Pretty darn good. So be sure to check out the show notes to grab that recipe card. All right. Let's jump on in because I don't know how long this episode is going to go. I'm really fired up by some of these, again, last vital steps, behaviors on just what this author mentioned about getting to where it is that you truly want in your life. And that's what we started the conversation on last week, is doing what it takes to get to where we want to be. And the two big ideas that came out of the talk from last week is, one, choice is an illusion. And there's a set formula to get from point A to point B. The only choice that you actually have is to do it or not and figuring out what you're willing to sacrifice in order to get it. Okay. That whole idea completely, like, it made sense. And at first it just felt a little like brutal. It's like, oh my gosh, like, geez, I can get there how I want. And I was like, no, that like makes total sense, right? Like, in order to do one thing, there's a formula. There are certain things you have to do. But what are you willing to sacrifice? And if you're not willing to sacrifice it, maybe it's not the thing that's really meant for you. And that's also okay, right? So use that as your guiding light. The second thing that came from it, the big idea, was this idea of neutral thinking and how neutral thinking is quite literally the 2% shift that's going to get us there, okay? So taking those two ideas and continuing on, and I should say pause. If you do not listen to the episode last week, I recommend you actually literally pausing and going and listening to that one first, because it's going to make these make a little bit more sense, but also just let it hit a little bit harder, okay? But the next vital step, continuing on in the road of It Takes What It Takes, the next vital step is it takes an ad campaign in your brain. This is so much more than just being able to produce those neutral thoughts that we were just talking about. This is what plays on repeat in your head and the conversations that you have with yourself. One of the best quotes from this chapter of the book says, "The law of substitution tells us we can keep only one thought in our minds at a time. Those thoughts may change from moment to moment, but we function best when we're broadcasting a series of strong, neutral statements to ourselves and don't let outside noise or our own internal chatter to derail those thoughts. The best athletes, the best performers in any field are masters at making sure they keep their internal ad campaign neutral and consistent with the task at hand." This is such an impactful quote, and I have to share this and pair this with it. This does not mean that we don't have negative ads that come on. We just now have the skill to turn the volume down on it or to change the channel once we become aware of it. And this is our opportunity to quite literally practice that, okay? Is practice in any situation that you would deem as stressful, maybe tomorrow, in the upcoming week. I want you to think about this. What are the facts of the situation? What is the best plan of attack and necessary resources in order to do said thing? And what's the proof that it could be done by me? And when I say the proof, I mean neutrally. I have done hard things. I have this entire book of proof that I have done the hard things, and therefore I can pull on that and inspire belief and inspire confidence to take the next step forward. Okay. This to me is also so freeing to know that like I don't have to live with the million negative ads in my head. I have the choice for one thing, and that's really only the one thing that my brain can focus on. So why not make it the positive thing? And I think by stopping and doing this and going through these processes and asking yourself these questions is the way to get there. Okay. The next thing, it takes visualizing. I love this one so much. In the chapter, his father, so the author's father, which is basically the role model and the inspiration for this book, was with him at night before he was getting ready to go to bed and was like, hey, I want you to try this. Do you think that dreams are real? He asked you this question, and he said, no, they're not real. They're only in your sleep. They're only like when you're daydreaming. And so he had him visualize like cutting open a lemon and sticking half of the lemon in his mouth, and just describe this process. And what came from it was the natural reaction that we all would have, right? Like our taste buds start to go, oh my God. And then we just like start to cringe a little bit. We're like, like lemon, right? Like just that. Think about it right now. Like I am having like my taste buds like go nuts. Okay. But all of this to say is he ended that conversation being like, hey, I thought you said that dreams weren't real. And he said, if they weren't real, then how could you taste the lemon? And he said, this is what I call possibility thinking. There is nothing that is impossible if we can see it first in our minds. And I could not agree more. I could not agree anymore because, guys, it's almost proven that our brain cannot distinguish what is reality versus what's dreaming. So instead of using it to bring us outcomes that we don't want, why not get good at visualizing the things that we do want? And one of the most powerful practices that I learned about, and I still keep with me to this day, is a practice that Michael Phelps uses, right? Michael Phelps, the freaking GOAT of just, I'm going to say the Olympics because so freaking decorated, right? But he visualizes these things. He visualizes the perfect situation, right? How he thinks it might go, how he ideally wants it to go, whatever that might be. But then he also visualizes the worst scenario. But here's the difference, is he pairs that with how he would handle it so that that pathway is already familiar in his brain. So let's say when something does not go in terms or in the way that he thought ideally or as he'd hoped it would go, he doesn't freak out, right? Like he keeps calm and cool under pressure because you better believe he's probably already visualized this going wrong and he knows how to get to the next best thing. So start small in using this practice by visualizing your day tomorrow before you go to bed tonight, okay? Visualize the things that you have to do. Visualize yourself going through your morning routine. Maybe even visualize yourself going through the hardest task of your day that you know you're inevitably going to have to face. If you have a race that's coming up or a hard workout, do this right before you do it, right? Not even just like right before you do it, but in the weeks leading up to it. I have my first Deca Strong race, not this weekend, but the upcoming weekend. And after my workouts, not only am I starting to think about the proof that, wow, like I just freaking did that. If I can do that, I can do 15 minutes or less of hell, okay? Like there's no way I can do that, okay? But I'm also starting to visualize it and put the pieces together with the proof of like, yeah, this is how I see myself moving flawlessly and quickly through the stations. And this is how it's going to feel. And this is like the touch, the sensation, right? Like get as detailed as you can with your 5 senses. And just like Michael Phelps does, I'm going to visualize the most ideal situation, but then I'm also going to visualize maybe I get to the bike and the thing that I've been working my ass off on and things don't go as planned. What's the next plan in order to get me to the goal that I know that I am capable of getting to, right? Or how do I respond? How do I react? So that way that is already familiar, okay? So it takes visualizing, such an important practice. Please, please, please use it, okay? The next step is it takes self-awareness. The truth is in order for any of this to actually land, the self-awareness piece has to be there. From the book itself, it says, the only real momentum that we have is what we learn about what produced our success or what created the adversity that challenged us in the first place. It is understanding our current level of confidence. That is the first step. That understanding, even in the absence of action, can actually be life-changing. And he follows it up with this. He says, the best don't dwell on the play calls that didn't work. They worry about what might work on the next drive. The last game is over. The last play is over. There's no debating it. If you won, why did you win? And if you didn't, why not? And I absolutely love this, not only because it's talking about the focus and where you're choosing to look forward despite whatever happened on that last play, but also the reflection piece and the chance to be honest with ourselves about what worked and what didn't work. I sometimes think that we rely on others to tell us what's missing and if we are doing enough, or confirmation that we're even doing the right things. I think that we need to take this power back a little bit and listen to our gut, because at the end of the day, we know ourselves more than anyone else does. And I have to imagine you know what it is that you need to do. Maybe there's a lack of motivation, there's a fear, there's a doubt, there is a belief that is keeping you from doing said thing, but you know what it is that it's going to take, okay? And also, we know that our own voice is going to resonate and influence us so much more than anyone else's. So let's use that to our advantage by taking the power back, by becoming self-aware, being honest with ourselves about what's working and what's not working, and execute. Okay, it's that simple, removing the emotion from it and just executing based off of what we know is true. Okay, the next thing. This is my favorite one, and I feel like I need to get a freaking tattoo of this somewhere on my body. It takes pressure. I've preached about this so many times on this podcast, that pressure is a privilege. And he talks about this in this quote. He says, you may be intimidated by that pressure you feel to perform every day. Instead, try embracing it. Pressure isn't a burden. It isn't something to be avoided or minimized. As tennis the great Billie Jean King said, pressure is a privilege. What does that mean? If you were under pressure, it means someone gives a shit about what you do. If you're under pressure, it means someone relies on you. That is the ultimate privilege. Sit on that for a minute, okay? As I start to read you this next one, where he says, the highest achievers in sports, business, the military, you name it, actually embrace the opportunity to be exposed. Why? Because they've prepared for the moment. Because who wants to live life on the practice field? At some point, we need to step onto the real field and play. It is your choice, and there's that word again, choice. So this is how I want to drive this home. I want you to think about a time where you went through pressure. And I want you to think about, had you not did that thing, what would you have missed out on when it comes to learning opportunities? The people you wouldn't have met, the new opportunities that you never would have had the chance to take up on. This is another gut check moment to reflect on the pressure that you are facing in your life. If it is absent, you are selling yourself short, you are not making forward progress, you need to go find and embrace pressure. If there is, will leaning into this pressure bring you the outcome that you want? And only you will know the answer to that. And what I mean by that is the pressure coming from the right things in your life? Or is it surface level things that aren't going to matter in 5, 10, 15 years from now? That's just as important, making sure that you're pursuing the right pressure over just any pressure that comes our way, okay? The last one, it takes role models. I need to say this. While achieving our dreams is so important, the legacy that we leave and the impact that we get to make is the true purpose of why we do what we do. I believe that hands down. There are people that I have personally looked up to in my life that have helped me believe more deeply in myself. And because of that, I've been able to turn around and give that same gift to so many other people. Think to yourself right now, who is your biggest role model? How can you emulate them, right? Think about how they show up, how they act, how they behave. Think about all the reasons as to why they're your role model, and show up and act like them today, not tomorrow, today. Even though you may not have the same status, the same accolades, achievements, that doesn't matter. Be that person today. And on the days where you are lost or it feels hard, I want you to remember the people that you are inspiring by merely trying and choosing to not give up. Live by this. Make who you are speak so loudly that they can't even hear a word that you say. I'm going to say that again. Live by this rule. Make who you are speak so loudly that they can't even hear a word you say. That is a mantra to live life by. That is how I want you to show up, okay? And this is the quote that I want to leave you with today. This still isn't about an outcome. It never will be. It's about creating the opportunity to win by behaving like the people who win. It's about creating the opportunity to succeed by not ignoring pressure when you know it's a necessary challenge that anyone who achieves it must navigate. It's hard, and you accept that. I was just listening to a podcast where the guy that was on the other side of the Zoom call, who is the coach, the mental expert, was saying, the better that you get, it doesn't get easier. The more physically fit that you get, the harder it gets because you level up and you race amongst people that are the best of the best, that have almost no flaws. So stop trying to chase the easy. Stop trying to chase the feeling of it ever being easier because it's not going to. The better you get, the harder races you are going to race in your life. Love that. Lean into that. See that as a privilege. And remember that it takes what it takes. The only choice that you have is whether or not you are choosing to sacrifice what it takes in order to get there. Thank you guys so much for showing up for you today, and I hope that this podcast truly hit home. For one, if this book really resonated with you, please go get the book. It Takes What It Takes by Trevor Moawad. Absolutely amazing book. Things that I'm highlighting and saving forever and ever and ever. Second, if you haven't already, please rate and review the podcast or share it with a friend that needs to hear this message today. I greatly appreciate it. And until next time, you guys, I will see you for another amazing episode of Who Know What's Going to Happen in My Life this week on next week's episode of Taco Betta Tuesday. See you then.